Hey, Guoba here. It's that time of the year where we're getting new relics, so let's check them out. And a video on the older 3.1 planers will be coming since more characters that actually use them have come out now. Let's check out our two new relic sets, a healer-oriented one, finally, and a pretty interesting DPS set. We'll see how they work using CE server testing, how good they are, and who can use them. Like and sub if this helps, and let's begin. Let's start with the Warrior Goddess of Sun and Thunder set, which we'll just call the Warrior Goddess set, I guess. The 2-piece is another lovely 6% speed increase. This is now our third 2-piece bonus of 6% speed alongside Sakados and Hackerspace, helping you build most supports and getting them to their desired speed thresholds. The 4-piece, however, is really cool, and we finally have a new healer 4-piece set. When the wearer and their Momo sprite provide healing to ally targets aside from themselves, the wearer will gain the Gentle Rain effect. This can be triggered one time per turn, lasting for 2 turns. When the wearer has Gentle Rain, they will get yet another 6% speed, but they will also increase all allies' crit damage by 15%. Just to be completely clear, because the wording is a bit weird, you do not need a Memo Sprite to use this. You just have to heal, or your Memo Sprite can heal, and it has to heal other allies. This means Remembrance MC cannot use this set, as they heal Mem, not another ally. Now let's first talk about that 6% speed. This is like having Sakados and Hackerspace in the past, two 6% speed 2-pieces, but all in a 4-piece set. So you get the 2 bonuses on top of this new crit damage effect, and this crit damage is for all allies. This means for any healer that you've been running 2-piece combos of speed on, you should now ideally replace it with this. However, as always, if you found a ton and have insane speed gear on them, refarming for a small gain is not necessary. But if you want the upgrade, it's there. But one thing to note is that the speed buff is gained in combat, just like the hero set that came out in 3.0. This can mess up your first speed breakpoint on wave 1. For example, a 100 base speed character with 128 speed pre-combat will mean that you won't hit the 134 breakpoint when including this speed. This is because up until the moment you actually heal an ally for the first time, you'll be consuming action gauge with 128 speed. Even if you get that 6% speed on your first turn, you'll end up at 153 AV and not take action again before the first cycle. This is niche, but worth noting for some people. So keep this in mind, unless you can heal super early, speed will vary on your first rotation. For example, Hyacinth's technique heals right at the start of battle, meaning you are immediately gaining the effects. For other healers, you just need to be wary of your first rotation, but you should just have a ton of speed anyway, and regardless, the buff will be up permanently after that first heal. Now onto the crit damage. 15% crit damage is nothing to scoff at for free. This is essentially a weaker, but easier to achieve and team-wide Sakados, which is really cool. Not all healers could run Sakados anyway, and they'd have to consume SP to give the buffs, which isn't really ideal in a bunch of teams. Now, legit, all you have to do is heal, and now the crit damage buff is up. But it being team-wide is even cooler than Sakados. Yes, Sakados is better for hypercarry, but dual DPS teams exist. Furthermore, we are entering a game state where supports and healers sometimes have sub-DPS capabilities. This is seen with Tribi, and now with Hyacinth. 36% crit damage for a soul carry is great, but 15% crit damage on your main carry, your Tribi, and your DPS healer is pretty juicy. But we should also remember that Remembrance units have Memo Sprites, and these extra characters are not buffed by single target things like Sakados, unless specifically targeting them or using Sunday. So if using Aglaya or Castries with a healer, this set will now be buffing Garment Maker or Netherwing. Fantastic news. Yes, even if you summon Netherwing and don't heal before it acts, the buff will automatically apply onto it as it is AoE. And finally, super fast DPS or action advanced DPS now no longer lose the crit damage that they would from Sakados' buff running out. Gentle Rain is based on the healer's turns, meaning even if your DPS takes 50 turns before your healer does, they'll all get 15% crit damage. So who runs this? Every healer in the game can run it and probably should. Sakados on Gallagher or the Watcher or Lynx or even Natasha should end up being better in a hypercarry team, but only if you have the SP to stack it. And remember, the buff can fall off with tons of action advance. If you want an easier time or don't always have SP spare, the Warrior Goddess set will just come out ahead. Wind set can end up being better in Caceres teams for healers other than Gallagher, but it's niche and has to actually end up benefiting the amount of dragons you get. Otherwise, the new set is 15% crit damage for Castries and Netherwing, as well as RMC and Tribi, and should be used. And if you really need that skill point on your first rotation, the OG healer set is there, but if you need it, you know that already. Other than healers, we have Fu Xuan. She heals every time she ults, so this will in fact trigger the buff, and now you have a mini E1 Fu Xuan in this relic set. And she finally has a new 4-piece relic set after 2 years. Also, the 2-turn part of Gentle Rain actually lasts longer than 2 turns if you activate her ult on your turn, which doesn't matter for any healer, but does matter for sus kits like Fu Xuan. And I guess March 7th that E6 can run this, but the shield effect setter is much better for survivability, so yeah. Okay, anyways, on to set 2, Wavestrider Captain. The 2-piece is a nice 16% crit damage. This is our first 2-piece relic bonus with crit damage, and is the crit damage counterpart to Scholar Lost in Erudition, but we usually prefer getting the crit rate. Anyway, already this cabin set has great farming efficiency. You have 2 fantastic 2-piece bonuses with, most of the time, a best-in-slot relic set for every healer. The 4-piece is very interesting too, just like our other one. When the wearer becomes the target of another allied target's ability, gains 1 stack of help, stacking up to 2 times. If there are 2 stacks of help when the wearer uses their ultimate, consume all help to increase the wearer's attack by 48% for 1 turn. So just like Poet, this looks designed for the future, but we can still use it right now. Let's first dive into its intricacies. What is being targeted by another allied target's ability? It's when you have a reticle over your character when an ally uses an ability. So even if it's team-wide like Sparkle's ult or Blast like Huohuo's heal, as long as it is on you when used, you will get 1 stack of help. This means for every ult, if you want to maximize the set, you'll need to be subject to 2 allied target abilities. This can be a Sunday skill and ult, a Bronya skill and ult, a healing ult, and a supportive skill. There are so many ways to get these help stacks. And even if you manage to ult without 2 help stacks, well, if you previously gained 1 stack, that will still remain. And the final intricacy is how long the buff actually lasts. People will see 1 turn and assume it's unusable, but this buff is one that will not tick down when applied during your turn. So if you ult at the start of your turn, your whole action will get the attack buff, and it will not reduce its duration when you end your turn. This means you will have your second action buffed by this large 48% attack buff. If you ult before your turn and then act, the buff will disappear, but this is normal. Either way, 48% attack is insane. It's like if you had the maximum Duke Relic set effect on your carry. So hypercarries that can ult frequently or are heavily ult based will enjoy this set. Just remember that you will have to give them 2 help stacks in between every single ult of theirs if you want the buff up. This can hurt synergy with Tribi though, who is one of the strongest supports right now in the game. She does not target any other allies when skilling or ulting, and therefore Tribi teams will be unable to maximize this set. But who can use this? Anaxa first comes to mind as a character with specifically a 2-turn ult rotation, and boy does he love attack percent. If he has a signature or gets kills, he hits that 2-turn ult, and so if he ults at the start of his turn and keeps up that rotation, this is his new best in slot in calculations, even beating out attack percent Boots win set. Again, this is with the caveat that you have to target him enough in between those turns, and high action advanced compositions could hurt this. Then it's all the way down to Yunli hypercarry. She gets targeted a lot, whether it's with an action advance, so your other support, or your Huohuo or Lynx. Yes, she ults off turn, but buffing that big counter damage, any subsequent counters, and your skill on your actual action makes this a very strong set. It will depend on your team as you need help stacks, and Robin can saturate the attack percent a ton, but this is yet another top tier relic farm option for Yunli. You shouldn't refarm, but if you slacked on her relics, you can now use this. Speaking of Yunli, Clara exists too. This will be another Clara best in slot alongside the Poet set. They are pretty much on par with each other until considering large attack percent buffs. Acheron is very ult focused and can ult very frequently, and people run her low speed in some comps. However, she is played with 2 Nihilities or 1 Nihility, 1 Harmony, and so getting the stacks is probably a little tricky. I would stick with the other sets because of this. Argenti will be spamming out ults out the wazoo, so he will have lots of opportunities to get this relic set's effect. But he's normally in dual DPS teams like with the Herta these days, or sometimes in Fugue Super Break, and these 2 teams would not want or enable this set. But if you run him as a traditional hypercarry, this will be a top option alongside Scholar Lost in Erudition. And Qingxue has a big mega ult combo. She spams skill into ult, into enhanced basic, into ideally a follow-up attack from her E4. By the way, why isn't it called autarky anymore? They changed this under our noses. Anyway, this would lead to a large attack buff for her full combo, and then she could recharge for the next one on her next action, which would still have the attack buff. Poet set exists if running her base speed, but here's a new best in slot for a faster Qingxue if performing the combo reliably. Now, the only other unit I could think of that can use this set without considering niche scenarios is Robin, but that's also kinda niche. Kinda. She normally runs 2 attack, which is 24% attack, so why not double it and go all the way to 48%? If only she could use the crit damage. This is her best in slot, if you can get those help stacks. So you'd need a healer to target her, and then ideally a Bronyo or RMC, which is a combo used quite often. After that, she can ult with a big attack buff, only needing 2 help stacks before her next ult. Seems annoying for the first rotation, but it's doable. Other than these gamers and future characters, I don't really know. Maybe Yanqing, E0 Lune, and Zila if they ult at the start of their turn. Zila works decently if her ult kills and she enters Resurgence, as that would be another ability benefiting from the attack percent buff. She also gets ult pretty fast. But yeah, this set is a bit finicky with the help stacks, because some supports and sustains can easily provide stacks, whereas some fail to. And so not all teams can optimize it even if the unit itself could use it. You need to probably be a hypercarry to use it, you need to ult at the start of your turn to optimize its uptime, and if you can't do that, you need to otherwise be slow like Yun Li or highly ult reliant. So the 2-piece is nice, 4-piece is sometimes usable, but realistically it's for the future. The other set being a general amazing healer set may make the Cavern a worthy farm though. Let me know your thoughts on the new sets and if I missed anyone. Thanks to my amazing YouTube members, thanks for watching, and have a good day.